Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan here as we continue on in the off season. Inside the Birds continues, and here's what we're going to do for the next two podcasts. We are going to, because we got the combine coming up next week, and I know we're going to have a lot of coverage from there. So what we felt like we're going to do for this podcast and the next one, we'll break it up. We're going to do and we do this every off season. We're going to do our kind of roster review. Who's going to be staying or going, but more so, what does the team need? What does it look like right now for them offensively and defensively? And then, of course, we're going to continue to update you guys on the coaching searches. Since our last podcast, Eagles haven't hired anybody, but they've lost yet another coach who we actually mentioned last podcast, a name not too many Eagles fans knew about. We'll get into that. And then we'll get into the state of on this one, we're going to do the offensive roster. And then next one, we'll do defensive roster as far as where they're headed, where they're going, and what it's all going to look like.
And in fact, as we examine this later in the show, I didn't realize how light they are at certain positions. This is kind of why we do it, because we examine what the roster looks like and what it potentially could look like if certain guys don't come back.
Right.
And it tells you, and that leads up to team needs, which will lead up to free agency. This is the way we're going to lay it out. And we'll be at the combine next week. We'll do at least one show from there, I would think. Let's do something from there.
Yeah, one or two shows from there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So look forward to doing that. And yeah, and then the following week after that, free agency starts. My goodness gracious. Well, yeah, wait. Yeah. So next week, the week after. Wow.
Yeah, we got a busy 2 to 3 weeks coming up here on Inside the Birds. So look forward to covering it from all the angles. And speaking of doing that, I want to say thanks to all of our people who reached out, because episode 1 of season 2 of the Intel with Greg Cosell dropped on Wednesday morning, 6 a.m. And man, people loved it. We start off with cornerbacks, looking at free agent cornerbacks, starting, of course, with James Bradberry and getting Greg's tape breakdown of Bradberry and other free agent corners. And if the Eagles do lose Bradberry, we talked about potential 1-year replacements, because they'll probably draft a guy. I think it's safe to say they're gonna have to draft a cornerback. And then you never know, though, whether even if it's a first round pick, you just never know if he's going to be ready to go and play. So the Eagles have wisely signed a lot of guys to 1-year deals in the past to kind of be a bridge if need be. And there are a couple of corners, Adam, that we talked about that would probably fit that role pretty well.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't just 1-year guys. It was those, as you mentioned. You brought up to Greg, Patrick Peterson. No, we actually went over 5 or 6 guys that could be 3-4 year guys. Jamel Dean, who Greg really likes. But as some of you guys commented on our YouTube area, the community page, that the problem with some of these guys is there's something off with a lot of these. There's some kind of issue.
Yep.
Injury, like Greedy Williams, Greg likes, but Greedy Williams has had a major injury history, and he fell down. Talking to the Browns about him over the years, he fell down their depth chart. But he's got a lot of talent. He's long. A lot of these guys have length. They're over 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
But Bradberry was cut simply because he didn't fit the scheme that they were going to run. They're going to Wink Martindale plays typically the highest degree of man coverage. That's not good for Bradberry. But Greg has some really interesting stuff. We kind of probed Bradberry's game this past season, his season. It was really interesting to hear how Greg looked at it, some stuff we weren't aware of. It's a great thing about getting him on here, because he sees players that we just don't get access to the tape to, or we haven't had a lot of information on. And the great thing is he's seen just about every fact. I think pretty much everyone we brought up he had seen for the most part. Or in fact, you brought up Zion McCollum's twin brother,
Tristan, right?
And the great thing is the Eagles have him, and he's a height, speed kid. He's a developmental corner, so we'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, definitely. And I was very intrigued by the Greedy Williams conversation that we had, but you got to hear it for yourself. It's on both our podcast and YouTube platform, so check it out. And again, thanks to everybody, because the reactions we got, the comments were great. It's like people were chomping at the bit. In fact, a couple of people said it helped them move on from the Super Bowl loss, which still a lot of people have not been able to kind of move on. I totally get it, but that helped.
And then Gannon had to go there in his press conference. Like, I think he had one press conference. Maybe he had maybe he talked somewhere else. But anyway, people like he had to start talking about how he could have done a better job, and it made social media people just the knives were out.
Yeah, the knives are going to be out for a while on Jonathan Gannon. There's no doubt about that. In fact, I even heard about because I think the Eagles play the Cardinals next year
Oh,
at the
they
rink,
do. I saw that.
and people are like, "Do you boo Jonathan Gannon?" I mean, my gosh, I can't believe that it's gotten to
It's
that.
like
But
the Cardinals are the team that nobody cares about. Typically, they're kind of like sadly the Chargers. I call them the team that time forgot. People don't care about them nationally.
mhm.
But man, wait, is that game here? The Cardinals game here or there?
But I think it's here at the link.
Oh man.
Who's the last defensive coordinator Eagles fans have liked?
They were very mixed on Schwartz. They got kind of sick of him at the end. There's no question about that. They
Mhm.
loved, well, Buddy wasn't the coordinator, he was the head coach, but they, of course, Buddy never won a playoff game, but the
It's got to
older,
be Jim.
yeah. Uh, Jim Johnson, you're 100% right. They loved him. Everyone did. Here's probably my favorite Eagles assistant coach because storytelling, and as you know, he would say things he's probably not supposed to say, and he'd go, "Oh, I'm going to probably get in trouble for that." Oh, he goes, "Oh well."
Yeah, people weren't that hard on McDermott because I think they appreciated that he had to take over in rough circumstances. But after that, people did not like Juan being the defensive coordinator. They hated Billy Davis for, I mean, the production or lack thereof was obvious. I don't think I think most of the part, even though it was mixed on Jim, it was actually more not liking him than liking him. Um,
Yep.
and nobody really liked Gannon by the end. So it just shows you how hard it is to be the defensive coordinator in this town. It really is
Or
very difficult.
honestly, any coordinator, if the fans, if they don't like it, if they don't like what they see, it's no different than any other area of
Yeah, I don't think
NFL. But
I think the Eagles management and ownership was harder on Mike Groh than the fans were because even though the
it's
offense
true.
regressed, it
Yeah,
wasn't that
yeah,
bad. It finished like
yeah.
12th overall, and it was one of the better situational third and down and red zone offenses. So yeah, no, I think the defensive coordinator comes up. It's almost like the other head coach in this town. So if you piss the fans off, they have a tough time
I,
forgetting it.
Although I mean, I look at a lot of fan bases. Ed Donatel got crushed by the Viking fans, and he's a defense coordinator.
Yeah, but he also
Uh,
didn't have a top 5 defense the way Gannon did.
but yeah, but the record was so good, 13-4, and people are like because they pointed to him as the reason why they didn't go anywhere.
Right.
In fact, the Giants beat them in the playoffs. But now I hear you on that. It is interesting though with that staff, and the word got out. Press Taylor was in trouble. Yeah, we outlined this 4 years ago. It's been 4 years ago, 3 years
Yeah.
ago, 3 years ago. Jeez.
Yeah, 3.
Oh,
Feels
as
like
we said
yesterday,
before,
man.
it does. And as we said before, it's just amazing to me is how miserable it was to always all negative. Everything we talk about is negative. The 20 season, we had we reported on some of this stuff first, and we had to tell the truth on some of the stuff and the ugly stuff. I was like, man, this is just, I've had enough of this stuff. Could they just get good coaches here?
Yeah, it got really bad. I mean, when you started to have like Press and Marty and Briner and who's the Scangarello, and it got really kind of convoluted there at the end, and that's why
Bad
Jeffrey Lurie made a
drafts.
big change. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeffrey got involved. And by the way, look, we'll get into the coaching search in a second here, but I could just tell you, Jeffrey Lurie's involved in this one. Defensive coordinator
100%.
search. Yeah,
100%.
yeah. How about that?
How about that? All right. So your power rankings are going to be out soon on InsideTheBirds.com. And on Wednesday, you did your weekly chat on Discord with our Patreon subscribers. So if anybody wants to jump in on that, which is you answer every question, you give great detail. I think you spend a good half hour to 45 minutes with the crew there. So it's patreon.com/InsideTheBirds if you want to sign up. It's really well worth it. And we've got more podcasts and Ask ITB live streams coming soon.
Oh, yeah, and then we're gonna have a GM walk us through. In fact, I should say walk through, take us really through the free agency system. So take us from the end of the regular season to now, and we're gonna do this right before free agency. And because we've never done this before, we've never had anyone really go through how do you put your free agency board together? What are these meetings are like? Who do you listen to? Who don't you listen to? Is it how much do you take the coaches to account because they got to coach them, but it's your call as a general manager if you've got control. So I think it's time we do that, and we'll do it for our patrons, subscribers, to help you learn what it's like to go through that. Because I'm very curious. I don't know a lot about how that's put together.
Mhm.
So I've always been curious because, and we know
Same
the
here.
Eagles under Harry Roseman are just masterful at it. Howie's got to be one of the best GMs in the last 20 years of free agency. He's just incredible at it.
He has been really, really good, especially for the way it started for Howie. It's been a
Mm.
remarkable turnaround.
Stacey Andrews, you just made me think of Stacey Andrews.
That was Joe still and Andy still more than Howie though. That
I
was
know.
'09, I think. Yeah, I think when
Oh,
I think of
so
Howie, I think of Dream Team. I think of
oh, Dream, yeah, 11. Okay.
Namdi and
Yeah.
yeah,
So Howie was the GM in 2010. I understand he didn't have personnel control then, but some of those free agents early on in his career weren't great, but really for several years now, he's very aggressive, very detailed, and kind of knows what he wants. And I let and we talked about this before, is that he doesn't get what he wants to the early part of free agency, which is now free agency really goes through the entire season. He'll do something in August. You just never know.
correct. All right, so let's get into this defensive well, I should say coordinator search, coach search, because as we spent a lot of time in the last podcast. We said the Eagles need an offensive coordinator, they need a defensive coordinator, they need a linebackers coach, and since that, they've done interviews, but they haven't replaced anybody, and now they need yet another coaching spot filled as they lost a guy that we brought up sort of in almost like, oh yeah, don't forget about this guy. John
Oh,
Gannon
yeah.
really likes him. He was a defensive quality control coach. His name is Joe Casper. Yeah, Joe
Yes,
Casper,
yes,
right?
yes.
And he didn't wind up going with Gannon to Arizona. He went with the other Fangio guy, the actual Vic Fangio in Miami, just to show you the kind of influence Vic Fangio was having on the Eagles now. And the time he was spending with the Eagles, he apparently knew that this Casper guy was a rising star like
uh,
Gannon did, and he got him to go to Miami.
I guess Casper got to Philly. Maybe Gannon had something to do with it, but I know for a fact a former coach recommended him to the Eagles to hire. Apparently, someone was with him somewhere. I know he worked for the Browns many years ago. So yeah, he's gone. They need a linebackers coach. Now they may wait until they hire the defense coordinator, whether it's Denard Wilson or one of these other guys. They may wait to hire that one, which would make sense. I mean, I don't know why you would do this. I understand that they've over the years under various staffs they've retained coaches for the new head coach, but when the coordinators come in, maybe you want to like I know that Schwartz had to inherit some coaches, and that's fine. But when you're at this point, whoever that guy is, you probably want to get an idea of who they would like as their linebacker.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. And if it sounds like it's a whole lot, but Adam, what we know is that a lot of these first interviews that are done, whether it's the Vance Josephs of the world or the Desais, or you're seeing some of the college names that have come out, the Georgia, the Michigan defensive coordinator, these are Zoom interviews, as we understand it, and then the list will get whittled down, right? And then over the weekend, they'll probably start doing like you would imagine follow-ups or second interviews.
Yeah. So coaching agent told me that his understanding was that most, if not all, were Zoom. And maybe they snuck somebody into NovaCare. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just
like
going by what this guy
Denard
told me.
was probably not Zoom.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, he's in the house.
If he was Zoom, that might be
So,
a problem.
although you know what's funny, in 2013, they did well. Chip, they interviewed it at the Fiesta Bowl, maybe,
Yeah.
but they definitely did some interviews here, but it wasn't at NovaCare. They did one at a hotel. It's 10 years ago, so I don't remember. But Denard Wilson, yeah, he got his interview last week. We're told Rollis, as we reported last week, he actually interviewed before he left for the Cardinals. Apparently, the word got out on him. I don't know how this happens. Because guys talk. Apparently, people know he's like a kind of a special coach. And the only coach he had never been when he was the assistant linebackers coach. The Vikings, I'm told that he really was the quality control guy. He was really just an advanced guy. He didn't
Usually
really
the case,
he,
right?
right. So he was only position coach for 2 years. Now he's a D coordinator. So that's pretty impressive.
It's amazing.
Under 30 years old. Wow, good. It's a good identification by Gannon. I'll give credit for that. Vance Joseph, we're told he did Zoom. I'm going to think, I believe it was Sirianni Tuesday, Roseman and Laurie. So Jeffrey's involved. When we say he's involved, he's sitting in. We're not saying he's hiring anyone. I don't think he's like with the head coaching search, it's a different story. Now he's super involved. Here, he's sitting in. So, and then Sean Desai was this week. Jim Leonard, I guess ESPN reported, this is bizarre. I don't understand this. Like he's having hip surgery, so he was thinking about taking the year off or something.
Yeah.
Why did you interview if you knew you were going to have hip surgery? I don't understand.
The only thing I can think of is, like the allure of an NFL job makes you, I guess it depends on like what kind of pain were you in? I mean, that's really difficult
I don't know.
I remember when Howard Mudd was having some real issues with his hip. I mean, he's obviously a lot older than Jim Leonard, but he had to be carted around the field when he was coaching his last year for the Eagles because he could barely stand up. That's how bad his hip was. But he coached because it's an NFL job.
The Mudmobile.
What's that?
Yeah, so he would have the scooter.
Yes.
At practice. He's passed away. An absolute legend. Former NFL player, longtime offensive line coach for the Colts. And then Andy hired him. And then as we get back to this one, Sean Desai. We put this out, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, that he was going to interview, and they finally got that done. That's because he knows the Fangio system. One thing I want to say about Fangio, which is comical. So he was asked about his time with the Eagles. He said, "Oh, I just visited." He didn't even talk about that he was a consultant during the playoffs. Oh, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni are friends, so I would just visit him from time to time.
Yeah.
What I think the issue was there, because he had an offset on his contract, Broncos still had to pay him. He didn't want they didn't want it to be out that he was whatever he was doing. Who the hell knows?
Right.
It's a come on. You're just visiting to say hi. Well, why don't you do a Zoom with I just thought it's funny. I the whole masquerade this whole season with this guy is just coming up. He's showing up everywhere. I saw him. You and I saw him in Miami. Or
yes.
I was like, what is he doing here?
Around quite a bit.
Is he just vacationing?
Yeah, he don't come to Philly to vacation. In the middle of the summer.
I know. I do know someone who coached for him, who I'm pretty tight with, said that he was doing a tour of camps. He's just staying in touch. A lot of these guys do this.
Well, I mean, the guy's got so many disciples at him. He's got to go.
I know.
He's getting to be like Bob Lamont of agents. He's got to go visit all of his people.
He's, it's incredible. Not every 34 defense is a Fangio, but it's just kind of funny. It's like if Bill Walsh had still been alive, I wonder if he would visit his disciples.
Yeah. Well, it's starting to get like if Sean McVay had ever put his finger on you at some point and touched you or patted you on the back, you were automatically considered a head coaching candidate. And it feels that way now with Vic Fangio. If Vic Fangio sneezed near you, you are now considered a Fangio disciple and will be up for a defensive coordinator job, at least for an interview. But by the way, that's important to mention because I think there's some misinformation out there about Sean Desai and because I heard someone say, well, he's with Pete Carroll and Pete Carroll's good at grooming assistant coaches. And he's only there for a year. He's not like a cover 3 Seattle Legion of Boom, Dan Quinn type of guy. He was in Chicago for the time that Vic Fangio was there. So he's much more of a Fangio disciple than he would be a Pete Carroll branch of that tree.
Yeah.
So just to clear that up.
Yeah.
All right. So that's really all we've got on that. And we'll see.
Glenn Schumann. Yeah.
Glenn Schumann. Right.
The Michigan defense coordinator's name escapes me. So this is casting a wide net, as you were saying, man. This reminds me. Didn't they? So they did an offensive coordinator search, right? In 2019?
Yeah. So Mike Gill asked me this on Football 4 at 97.3 South Jersey. He said, is this a bad sign for Jannard Wilson that they're interviewing so many people? And I said, if, you look at the recent history of the Eagles, whenever they have an opening, and it's not just under Nick Sirianni, it's been this way for the last 6 or 7 years, they generally and typically cast a wide net. And then you and I were talking when they fired Mike Groh after the 2019 season, they must have interviewed 5 or 6 guys. They interviewed Jim Caldwell. They interviewed Graham Harrell from USC. They interviewed James Urban, I mean, from
Yeah,
the quarterbacks
Ra-
coach for the
Ravens.
Ravens. They interviewed Mike. Well, they wanted to interview, if you remember, Mike Kafka, but there was some weird permission, non-permission thing that they never wound up doing it,
Here's
as far as
why.
I remember.
They back then the rules were a little different. You cannot, you can't if you have to list on the permission, the pinks of the permit, whatever the slip that you send into the league, into the club. Okay, what's it for, and what are the responsibilities? It would not have been play calling,
Mm-hmm.
so he was blocked. That I remember
Right.
reporting that at the
Right.
time, because I heard Kafka, when Kafka got the job of Kansas City early on. It was pretty well known he was the pass game coordinator. Bieniemy was handling the run. Kafka was handling the pass, because Kafka is so smart. And Andy knew it right away. Like, he's, oh boy, this guy's really got it. He really, I'll have him be my guy for the pass, and Eric is be for the run guy. And the Eagles kind of knew, again, they had relationships with the Chiefs. Somehow they knew how smart he was. And I give them credit for getting on that. But as you said, they weren't allowed to get him.
Yeah, and so Kevin O'Connell was also in that mix. So they interviewed about 6 or
Really?
7
Wow.
guys,
Hmm.
and then what did they wind up doing? It seemed like a bad sign for in-house candidates, but what they wound up doing was promoting Press Taylor to offensive coordinator, and then bringing in a bunch of guys like Marty Morningweg and Scangarello. And look, I don't think the Eagles are going down that route again. I think what I could see is, and this is just you and I speculating here, not reporting, if Denard Wilson gets it, he's a first-time defensive coordinator, and you know the Eagles still feel like their Super Bowl window is pretty big here. So maybe they'll bring in somebody as a senior defensive assistant who, like, let's say Vance Joseph doesn't get the Broncos job, but they still want to promote Denard Wilson, the coordinator. Maybe Vance Joseph gets it brought in for senior defensive assistant. You know, I don't think Sean Desai would leave Seattle associate head coach for it,
Well,
but you never
remember,
know.
Vance Joseph, if he doesn't get remember, he's still, as we talk here, I don't know why the Broncos haven't hired anyone yet, but Joseph was thought to be a finalist for the Broncos DC job.
Right.
So if he doesn't get that, then that can
That's
come
what I
into play.
said.
And
Yeah,
then
if he doesn't get the job there.
right.
Yeah.
And then you'd mention, I think our last show, John Pagano, right? Isn't there a connection with Sirianni?
Well, I just know that Pagano was a defensive. Remember, I was asking people who know Sirianni, who is this guy coach with? Who should I be looking
Yeah.
at? And he said, well, you know, John Pagano was a defensive coordinator for the Chargers when Sirianni was there. So that's another guy who has experience, and right now I believe has no job. And I'm not sure if he's been
Correct.
interviewing with anybody. He also has linebackers experience too, and we know the Eagles need a linebackers coach. So that's just a name that I would key in on.
Right. And he coached with Vic in Denver, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. He was. Yes, he was also. That's who the team he was last with.
Yeah, there you go.
So yes,
Makes
he
sense.
was once with Vic Fangio. So I'm surprised he's not a head coach of a team somewhere, or a defensive coordinator right now, because
Yeah, it's
because of the connection right there.
The younger brother of Chuck
Pagano. That's right. All right, so that's it. As soon as we get more information, as we always do, we will let you know. But that's what the landscape looks like right now. All right, let's get into, Adam, the offense. We're going to break down this offensive part of the Philadelphia Eagles as we do a roster review here. First of all, we're going to remind everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, and they're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. And we'll pause real quick for a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop in at Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You'll get a great deal. All right. So in concurrence with this, Adam, Andrew DeCecco is also doing a Stay or Go series on InsideTheBirds.com where he's going through The first episode or the first article, whatever we call these things on the internet, on InsideTheBirds.com, came out on Tuesday, I believe, and he went through quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs. And there's some movement that's going to take place here. We'll start at quarterback. A lot of this matters or depends on what happens with Gardner Minshew, if he's going to wind up getting a job elsewhere or not. If he does leave the Eagles, right, then it leaves them with Jalen Hurts under contract and Ian Book still under contract, which means to me they would probably look for another economical, quote unquote, high end number 2 quarterback.
Yeah, we talked at the last show. There are a ton of veteran quarterbacks out there, like 20 of them, journeyman type, that they could bring in with experience. But they love Ian Book. He's super athletic, smart, high character guy. They really like him. But I don't know that he's ready to be number 2. So, and I haven't heard that he's going to compete for it yet. So he's still on the roster. This is his 3rd year, goes into his 3rd of his 4-year contract. And yeah, they claimed him off waivers, yes, last August. So that's something they have to look at for a veteran backup, no question.
Yeah. So you also wonder if the Eagles will sort of try to recreate their pattern and use a higher than normal draft pick on a backup quarterback. Someone that they deem like a high-end backup. I would have to think that Jalen Hurts will have no problem with it the way Carson Wentz apparently did. So, but look, if the Eagles think that this was a formula that worked for them, then when they think that they're onto something, they don't deviate. So unless they love Ian Book, they're going to have to figure out a way to get a backup that they think can win them games.
Fair point. So in 2020, I'm drawing a blank here. Who was the 2?
It was
Nate Sudfeld.
Nate Sudfeld, yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is the guy they did groom to be the backup of the future when they brought him in. It's fall of 2017, was it? I think.
Well, actually, when you say 2020, that was actually Jalen Hurts's. They wound up moving on from Nate Sudfeld because they went in with
who played in that Washington game?
Hurts. Remember he oh well, no, you're right. They still had Sudfeld as the number 3.
I thought
Hurts,
so, yeah.
Hurts leapfrogged him.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that was the problem. Remember Peterson screwed it up. They were supposed to split the half. I'm told they were supposed to be Sudfeld one half, Hurts the other. Then who the hell knows? They screwed the rotation up. There was miscommunication. We'll leave it at that. No, they weren't trying to throw the game. This Giants, Joe Judge. It's ridiculous. Anyway,
but no, they will need an economical. Because listen, they're spending money on they're gonna need their money. They can't be spending 12 million or 10 million or even 8 million on a backup QB. I know they can spread it out with voidable.
Yeah, they can. They can definitely do that. I don't worry about getting a better quarterback. That's easy to do. This is the only it's one of the few positions where supply is outliving demand. Like
true.
Free agency receiver's not very good. Running back is good. It's top heavy. We'll get to that. There's some great choices I really look forward to talking about in a minute. But I'm intrigued by Ian Book just because of the stuff I've heard. Again, I'm not saying he's going to compete for the number 2, not just yet. We'll see what OTAs look like. But if they do something you said, let's say he spent a 3rd round pick on a quarterback, maybe Ian Book does compete for it because how many quarterbacks are you going to need in camp?
Probably 4. Right.
Yeah.
Only,
at most. Right. Some teams only do 3 for their off-season program. Like you have a rookie camp where you have to have 3, but they're just basically camp bodies, as they say, for OTA or for rookie camp. So it's interesting. But Ian Book's a guy we're gonna certainly continue to look into.
Is Carson Strong playing anywhere right now? Like XFL, CFL?
He was definitely in a camp. It's a great question, boy. And whatever happened to Jamie Newman? He's in CFL. That's right. He's in CFL. That's right.
Come on.
I don't know.
I just think Carson Strong is the strangest. Like he went from he might get drafted way higher than people think to he's like might be this great unsigned draft pick or a rookie free agent, right? To he's like he can't even make a practice squad for any of the 32 teams. To now
He
he's got to
was,
play in a different league.
yeah, he didn't want to play. In fact, yeah, he went to the Cardinals practice squad, and I don't know that they brought him back. And
Crazy.
then, yeah, Jamie Newman went to the CFL. That I know he's been there for a couple of years. In fact, Strong is not on the Cardinals offseason roster. Boy, how the unmighty have fallen.
Yeah, exactly. How the unmighty have fallen.
I made that up years ago. I say some stupid stuff on Sirius XM, and I just
That's a perfect summation, though.
I know John Hanson's better than I with the monikers. He has the nicknames of players. I just come up with the phrases, and he I literally have him tearing sometimes. Because how do you come up with that? It just came to me.
That's a good one.
It's the Q&A name. I'm like, you guys are going to kill me on this. It's not going to be good and make fun of me if you don't like it. And I said Q&A. You go, no, it's great.
Perfect. It's perfect.
Better than my first one for that one. But anyway.
So who are the backups that you have your eye on?
All right. So what you mean for quarterback?
Yeah, you said you wanted to go through the list there.
Yeah, I mean,
who makes sense?
So for me, they put a high premium on timing and accuracy. They're not so worried about arm strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Eagles certainly Hurts has a good arm. He can throw downfield. He's one of the better downfield throwers. But the big thing is this is a timing. When it's right, it's more of a timing based offense, and you saw a lot of that this season with Hurts, no question. So the kind of guys that would fit, I think, in this offense, Andy Dalton would fit for sure. He actually had 18 passing touchdowns. I know it sounds crazy. He got off to that great start for one half against the Eagles. And then he had a bonehead pick. But Dalton, from it, because he's played in West Coast offense before, I like him in it. Other than that, the guys that I like Mike White a lot. He's got a lot of moxie and toughness.
He can move too, right?
He's athletic. Yeah, great point. Yep. He shocked me. I remember I was at training camp last year, and I remember 2 years ago. I'm sorry, 2 years ago. And the Jet beat writers were just, Mike White's terrible. He'll never make the team. And I remember asking someone in the Jets front office, I said, hey, this Mike White didn't look very good today. This is when the Eagles were practicing there. He goes, oh, no, we really like him better than the media does. Don't listen to those guys. I was like, okay. I was like, I don't know. I said, I don't know, man. These guys know they've said he's looked bad all camp because we hear you, but he's better than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Then he had to play, made the team, and he had to play really well. And he did well this season. He got Matt Milano broke his ribs, the Bills linebacker. But I like Mike White a lot. I do. I think he's really a fun backup quarterback because he's athletic, as you said. Teddy Bridgewater. See, my problem with Teddy Bridgewater is this. He's with Miami now. He's a check down quarterback. He will not drive the ball downfield. I don't want guys like that. Not that anybody you can get there is Jalen Hurts, but I want someone who's aggressive. Mike White, he's aggressive. Andy Dalton's aggressive. Again, folks, we're not saying, oh, it's Andy Dalton, he's a journeyman quarterback. That's who's on this list.
Correct.
I want someone who's aggressive. By the way, Joe Flacco played pretty well. He did a good job. In fact, he single-handedly brought the team back against Cleveland. That was one of the strangest games. That game epitomized the Browns season last season. Other than that, I don't like Jarrett Stidham. He had one great game against the Niners of all teams. I don't know where that came from. Oh, the other guy, we'll see if Dallas wants it back. I would absolutely sign Cooper Rush in a heartbeat. He's a timing guy.
Absolutely. I just wonder if the Eagles sort of learn a lesson from, when Minshew came in, they sort of ran the same offense, but then there was really no zone read element. Even though Minshew can move around the pocket well, he's not really a guy who's super athletic. I think Mike White is probably a better athlete, right? Yeah. So I wonder if they would want to target somebody who's a little bit younger, like Mike White, somebody who has enough athleticism every once in a while. Keep a defense honest with a run to the edges, just to kind of keep up the offense because they missed that with Minshew. But they also won. They beat the Jets 2 years ago with Minshew, and he played really well. I think people are judging Minshew on his worst moment and ready to move on. But
was it the Saints game where he struggled?
Yeah, and then he threw 2 picks against the Dallas Cowboys, but they did put 30. Well. They put 30 points on the board in that.
Yeah, he played pretty well in that game. He just doesn't have the downfield arm that they like.
Right.
The thing is, before we move on to the next position, See, with Brian Johnson, and he's going to call the plays. We don't know what kind of play call. We don't know how aggressive we'll be. It's you would think they'd want to keep that part the same because Steichen and Hertz were so joined at the hip in terms of being aggressive. That can Sirianni's got to make sure and stay on Johnson to do that as a play caller.
Gotcha. Definitely. I just want to address one thing really quickly on Jalen Hurts because I heard some conversations, mostly sports radio-ish this past week about the perils of signing Jalen Hurts to like a 10-year, almost like a Patrick Mahomesian deal because, guys get hurt, especially guys who run. And how can you have these, cap numbers 8, 9, 10 years when he could be hurt in 4 or 5? And you can tell me if I'm wrong because I haven't seen Mahomes' contract, but I think I remember 10 years is not really 10 years. What they do is sort of like the dummy years. You got to give a guy so much guaranteed money that you want to spread it out over a longer time so that you have a lower cap number. In my mind, like I'm sure with Mahomes' contract, most of that guaranteed money is within the first 4 or 5 years, Adam, so that by the time that if Patrick Mahomes is just the normal Patrick Mahomes for the next 4 or 5 years, once that guaranteed money is up, I'm sure they're just redoing that deal. Like it's not really 10 years of full guaranteed money, right?
Not at signing. It's not. No, what it has is what are called a lot of advance guarantees. If he's on the roster this March, next year's base salary is fully guaranteed.
Right.
That's the I used to call it a scam that some agents see. It's actually really smart. Although this is not it's not a very good contract. No one should ever do a 10-year contract at quarterback.
Right.
But Lee Steimer did a good compromise. He's like, okay, my guy's going to play well. So if you're going to do this, if you want a team friendly contract, well, you're going to have to guarantee money in advance if he's on the roster for the previous year. And that's Bus Cook did this with Jay Cutler like 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never seen this before. And I was like, what is this? And the cap guy goes, oh yeah, Bus presented this to us because we went back and forth this and that. And it's called an advance guarantee. And most quarterback contracts are like that now.
Yes.
Instead of, except for Deshaun Watson, who got 5 years fully guaranteed at signing, which no team wants to do, and hated the Browns for that. But
right.
So that's that.
So yeah, I just want to let people know: don't be scared by the number of years. A lot of the time, that's just a mechanism for spreading out a lot of money. You saw how quickly the Eagles got out of the Carson Wentz contract, so I mean, I wouldn't be worried about that.
Although they got zapped because of the proration, they got zapped.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you sign a quarterback, if he stinks 2 years later, then no matter what, you're paying a bad price.
Sure,
so
sure.
There's always that involved, whether it's injury or he's just bad. So,
correct.
But I wouldn't be scared by the number of years because that stuff gets.
Well, no one's doing it over 5. No quarterback does anywhere close to over 5 now. It's 3 to 5 years or the contracts now.
Right.
You just the Minshew, the Mahomes is an outlier.
Yep.
I know his agent, Jalen Hurts' agent, Nicole Lynn, has not really done a big contract yet. Hasn't done a quarterback contract at all either. But I mean, I'd just be shocked if he. Now again, we don't know if he's going to get a deal. We explained this in the last show. It's the Eagles want to do it, but what does he have in mind? We don't know what he's looking for yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that ultimately decide by training camp whether he gets one. As we said they would be smart to see what happens with Burrow and Herbert, and then because they're going to get the top, they're going to be the top of the market. And Hurts shouldn't be too far away because remember, folks, it's about projection. Hurts has had the breakout season. You love him, everything about him. You know how hard he works. You don't have to worry about anything. Just going to get better. And the Eagles have a history of being smart about it, getting in early, and that's what they're going to try to do. But it takes 2 to tango.
100%. All right. Move on to running back. We've got, obviously the names Kenny Gainwell, Kennedy Brooks was brought back on the futures, Trey Sermon. The 2 ones that are free agents are Miles Sanders, obviously, and Boston Scott. And look, I know Miles Sanders sort of came out on his Instagram or did an interview at him and said, please, Howie, have me back. I love you. And I mean, you might as well just basically tell Howie you'll come at a discount when you do that. But I mean, it's like you're begging for less money when you say that.
This one isn't hard to figure out. I think we kind of hinted at this. He was basically a 2-down back.
Yep. And
that kills your value, not only for the club that you played for, but for any potential team because they know it and the way that you're used, it tells you something. As well as he played, it's a situation where you look at the snap counts, you go, this guy's not, I'm sorry, he's just not that guy. He's not a 12 to $15 million contract guy.
I did not
I,
realize it until looking at the snap counts the other day that he only played 57% of the offensive snaps, which, by the way, credit to him for having such a productive year on such little usage. But he is not a 3-down back. They don't throw to their running backs anyway. So if he wants to come back, he just has to understand he's not, he's a 1 to 2 down back, and he's going to get paid like a 1 to 2 down back, which is not a whole lot. So, if he wants money, it's probably going to have to come somewhere else. If he just loves being an Eagle, he's going to have to probably accept a below market deal and understand that no matter how many yards you have, no matter what your yards per carry is, the way your usage is, you are a part of a committee. And Kenneth Gainwell is going to be entering year 3. And Adam, they're going to want to get his snaps up as he gets older. I mean, I think they're going to want to see him progress even more. So, I mean, the idea that Miles Sanders could come back and be a 51 to 52% usage,
Sure.
down. So think accordingly. The money for that is not usually very good.
Yeah, to me, he's no more than $8 million a year player based on the snap counts. In fact, if you look at his career, now obviously it's because of injury that his snap counts were down and not quite as good as he'd like. Yeah, that's crushed him. In fact, this is the first year. See, this is what's not good for him. It's his first year that he played a full season, and he's still only at 50%, 57% of snaps. That's not a good sign.
Right.
It's just not. This is not good for free agency to me. That'll hurt him, and because of that, getting the going rate now will be 13 to 15 million if they get it. If Barkley gets a deal, and Josh Jacobs gets a deal, doesn't get tagged, that's what you're looking at. And Miles Sanders is not only is he not as talented as those guys, he just doesn't play as much.
Yeah. I just don't know if the Eagles are even going to give him like 6 or 7 million a year. I don't know if they're going to do it. What's that?
Connor James. I call it James Connerville.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just have a feeling he'll get a better offer from somebody else. And so that other team will want to use him more to make the money match the allocation. Like the resources have to match the money, right? If you're already planning on reducing his snaps to 48 to 52%, then you're thinking of that financially, then you're probably thinking of like 4 to 6 million instead of 6 to 7 million. So I just don't think it's going to wind up matching up.
Yeah, we can wrap this running back up and move on in a second here. So it's right now it's Gainwell who closed the season well. His role will be bigger. He got the trust of the coaches later in the season. Trey Sermon, we've been telling you for nearly 2 months now, they want to take a look at him. And Kenny Brooks he's never played for them, so we don't know. He's just on their offseason roster. That's what running back looks like.
Right.
The guys that I like in free agency, if they're going to go with just a true committee, Sanders is clearly the lead back. That's not in question. He's always been the lead back, but what kills him is not being on third down. But if they're going to go with a committee, the guy I love, and he's been Dalvin Cook's backup, is Alexander Madison. He could be a 3-down back. One of their coaches told me he was the smartest rookie he'd ever been around at the running back position.
Wow.
Yeah. So he could do it all, but he's probably at best 40 to 50% play time guy, probably closer to 40. But again, if you're going to be a committee guy, so he'd be a guy to look. He's got size. He can block. I know he blocks really well. He's super smart. If you want now, a guy that I like a lot. Now we'll see what New England does with Damian Harris, who's been their starter. But Ramondre Stevens I'm sure he's going to take over there. So he's a grinder type, good player, good finisher. Those would be Deontay Foreman is a guy that had a really good season for the Panthers. He finally put it together. Who's a really first and second down back. So those would be the guys who could probably. And then of course the guy we reported on before we move on to receiver at the trade deadline. Because we're heavily involved in talking to the Browns about Kareem Hunt. It didn't wind up happening.
Right.
But just the guy to put on your radar. And he could, by the way, he's a good third down back too.
All right. I'm going to say something that you're probably not going to agree with, but okay. I really believe it. I think I've seen enough out of Boston Scott to think that if he had a higher role, like 25%, he'd be a pretty good running back for them for what they
Yeah.
do in this offense. And that if you went forward, instead of getting one of those guys you just mentioned and said, I'm just going to go forward, Kenny Gainwell, he's going to see 50 some odd percent of the snaps. Boston Scott, who's going to get 25%, and Trey Sermon, who's going to get the other 25%, then I'm good. I don't need to spend a whole lot, 3 to 5 million on any of those guys you just mentioned.
Okay.
If I can just give Boston Scott and Trey Sermon and Kenny Gainwell more opportunities.
I would say this: that's a big leap of faith. If you and I were running the show, I'd say, hey, let's go through our off-season program. Let's see how Sermon does, because he's the key to this. Not that he'd be the starter.
Mm-hmm.
We know who Gainwell is, as you said. We want to increase his role. We want to take a hard look at Sermon. And that will ultimately determine whether we draft a running back. We'll get into that in weeks down the road with Cosell. But whether we want a running back in the draft, or do we want to sign one after the compensatory formula doesn't get nailed, so we doesn't hurt our comp picks for the future.
Yep.
So it's a good discussion. That was definitely worth looking into.
I think that's the smarter, even making that late signing. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
All right, wide receivers. This is a pretty set group for the Eagles. Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Quez Watkins. There's, he's probably be back for year 4. I mean, he's under contract. No reason to get rid of him, even if you're disappointed.
No, but he's got to make the team. I'm at the point with him. He's going to make the team. Yes, he's on the team. I get it. They'll bring him to training camp. But they have, number one, if Pascal doesn't come back, they must upgrade over Watkins as a 3. He's a 4. He's just a 4. That's all he is. He regressed this season. I get that he was hurt. He just did not come up big. Think about how good Hurts was, and how the fumble against Washington, the miscatch in the playoffs, and the other times he should have gotten the football, either dropped it or didn't get it, didn't track it well. It's another thing. He's got to work on his ball tracking. It's just not good enough.
Do you think if Zach Pascal came back on a 1-year deal, but was the slot receiver, that he could be a little bit more productive?
Sure.
Because that's to me, that's not a bad idea. You have vertical guys with AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. You don't need a vertical slot. You just need a good Jason Avant-like slot.
I agree
for this offense, and I think Pascal probably could have been used more.
A couple more things before we get out of the receiver here. So Britton Covey, they wanted to take a look at him. They just didn't get a chance to as a potential slot. And Devin Allen, my understanding is they really want to develop him as a receiver, not just as a kickoff returner. Remember what he did? Was it against Cleveland on that deep post for a touchdown?
Yeah.
I know he's a project, but the reason why he's still here is they want to take a look at him as a receiver in the offseason program. And Tyree Cleveland, we don't know a lot about, is with them in the practice squad. And Greg Ward, they know very well, but they kind of know who he is. So that's the receiver position. But they need to really upgrade at the 3.
Right. Now, tight end is probably the most firm position on the entire team. They don't need to go get anybody. They got Dallas Goedert, Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra. I thought looked nice as a number 3 tight end. Might have a chance to be the number 2 tight end going into the year. And they still have the development of Tyree Jackson, if he can kind of stay healthy.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, there's no reason to draft one, I don't think. I don't think you have to sign one. I think they're good here.
See, I don't think Calcaterra would ever be the 2. He would be the 2A. What that means is they'd split the role. Stoll's the inline 2. He's the wide tight end. And then if they want to go 12 and take Goddard out, Calcaterra is the slot tight end or the X tight end. But yeah, he's not taking Jackson's job as the Y. That'll never happen. Calcaterra's just not.
No, but he did block better than we thought.
Yes. He did report that. Yeah, we did. Yeah. But Stoll is an absolute animal. He's just, you're talking to someone close to him. He just prides himself on, he knows his role in the NFL. If he's going to be here in the league for 10 years, whoever the heck it's with, it's going to be as a wide tight end. We've told you for 5 years, it's so hard to find these guys. And I don't know who found them. I give the scout or whoever the heck found them credit, because this is like a guy that we knew when he came out of Nebraska, he was a little bit of an athlete before he hurt his MCL, and then he turned out to be this guy that he would blow them away in training camp, and he's been a good story. And then Tyree Jackson, this guy's got to get a chance. I'm hoping his knee's okay.
Yeah, definitely. You just called Jack Stoll an animal. I think that
Well, he gets after it,
number
man.
two tight end who averages like 7 yards a catch.
No, but at getting it in the run game, he is a
He does.
phenomenal blocker.
He is a really good blocker. Absolutely. Those Nebraska guys, they can block, right?
You hope.
All right.
Yeah.
Offensive line. All right. So the big question
there's
here
some
is,
issues.
yeah. Big question here is, what does Jason Kelce do? If he retires, that's great. I mean, well, not great, but I mean, not good for the Eagles, but he's had a great career, but you've got Cam Jurgens to play center. If he doesn't retire, you've got Cam Jurgens to play right guard, because as we've been reporting, Isaac Seumalo is going to be a top free agent interior offensive lineman, and he's probably going to make a good amount of money. Probably outprice himself for the Eagles.
All right, so let's move this forward here. Dickerson's your starting left guard. If Isaac leaves and Kelce comes back, that's Jurgens as the right guard, most likely. Can't say for sure, but most likely.
Correct.
And
by the way, just a note on that, it was great that he got to play a lot of center, because Jason Kelce hurt his elbow last year and needed that surgery. I think people forgot that. But, I know the organization was hoping to see him more at right guard in case Kelce was either healthy all year or came back. They didn't get a chance to really see him as much at guard as they would have liked to last year because Kelce got hurt. But it was good for his development at center.
Sure, and remember he only played 2 years on offensive line, which was at center as a former tight end, so he's got a lot to learn.
Yep.
So moving this along here on the offensive line, finishes out. Suapetta's back. They just don't have any depth at guard right now. It's definitely as we went through this, I was like, wow, they really don't have any. In fact, they need 2 guards as we look at their team needs.
Yeah,
they need to add 2. To me, whether it's 2 in the draft, it behoove them to sign a veteran guard. I get it, Driscoll could play guard, but our understanding is they like him better as a tackle.
Yep.
He's just not quite strong enough to be a guard.
I agree 100%. And even if it's just a practice squad veteran guy, they've done a good job of having good backup interior linemen. They need that because Dillard will probably leave in free agency as well, and he was playing left guard when needed. So I totally agree with you. They need to address the interior offensive line in both draft and a veteran free agent. No doubt.
And on the veteran free agent, they retained Fred Johnson, who could play left tackle and guard. He's big guy, 6'7". He's played both in the NFL. I'm not saying he's that guy, but he could be.
Right. He can compete.
He could factor into it, right?
Yeah. I would like to see them draft somebody. You want them to get some young youth in there.
Oh, they will. They will.
Yeah.
In fact, one of those 2 first-round picks would have surprised you if they traded down to pick up additional picks and they
not at all
start drafting linemen.
Not at all.
So they got to get depth at guard. That's a big one. And then at center, if Kelce retires, it's Jurgens and not Tom Cameron Tom.
Cameron Tom. I am waiting for the day that the Eagles have a draft where they take like 7 guys and 4 are offensive linemen and 3 are defensive linemen. That's coming. That is coming someday.
Like the Panthers 2 years ago drafted all defensive players, not one offensive player.
That's right.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
But the best thing we can say is we just sort of zip through offense there. You got your starting quarterback. You're pretty good at running back, even with Sanders leaving. They'll do something. You're great at wide receiver. You're great at tight end and offensive line. Sure, there's concern there, but
they need some.
They've been planning for it, though. It's not like they're completely bare in the cupboard. It was smart to take Jurgens the way they did. So that was good.
Sure. Well, yeah, they're thinking ahead, but man, they need more experience. I really like your point about adding a veteran interior lineman. They a guard / center. That's good. And with Seumalo, I can't see any way he returns. I mean, never say never. We always say that with his stuff.
True.
But if he doesn't return, he should get a big deal. And that's, to me, I know Rosen was going to say it, but that had to be what he was thinking. Part of what he was thinking is about, he was so quiet in that press conference, but he lit up when he talked about compensatory picks.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. That's funny.
That's a true funny. GM right there. When his eyes get wide when you talk about comp picks.
Oh yeah, did you say comps? Yeah,
comp picks. Yeah. Oh yeah. I know we were excited. Jimmy Kempski probably fell out of his chair somewhere.
Oh, Roseman and Sirianni are both talking midday. Wednesday, I think around 1:30 Eastern on Wednesday.
Yeah, at the combine. We'll be there. I'll be there.
Yep.
All right.
Sure.
Sounds good. Next episode, more on the coaching searches, coordinator searches, coaches searches, and of course we'll do the defense, which we're going to probably spend a lot more time on because
Oh my God.
there's a whole lot of questions that need to be
13.
answered there. Yeah.
13 free agents. Yeah.
13 free agents. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds.